There is one military subject that is almost completely absent in scale modeling, the military vehicles of North Korea. And that's quite surprising. The country has one of the largest armies in the world and dozens of unusual armored vehicles. Yet while model companies continue releasing new Tiger and Panther kits every year, North Korean military equipment remains largely unexplored in the modeling world. So in this video, we'll take a look at what North Korean vehicles actually exist in scale modeling, and which ones you can recreate through kit bashing and conversions. The first kit worth mentioning is the Hwasong 5 from Trumpeter in 1 to 35 scale. Formally, this is a ballistic missile system, but from a modeling perspective, the most interesting part is not the missile itself, but the large wheeled transporter erector launcher that carries it. The real system appeared in North Korea in the late 1970s. Essentially, it is a local version of the Soviet R-17 missile, better known in the West as the Scud. These systems became one of the core elements of North Korea's missile forces and are regularly seen during military parades. The launcher is mounted on a heavy 8-wheel chassis derived from the Soviet MAZ-543 family of military trucks. Vehicles of this type were originally developed in the USSR as transporters for missile systems and other heavy military equipment. Now about the kit itself. Trumpeter produced a fairly large model. When assembled, it becomes a long vehicle with an 8-wheel chassis and a large missile on top, so it takes up quite a bit of space on the shelf. The kit is also quite complex. There are many parts, especially in the suspension and in the launcher mechanism. The chassis frame, suspension, equipment details, and the missile itself are all reasonably well represented. With careful assembly, the finished model looks convincing. However, the build requires time and patience. This is not the easiest kit, and beginners may find it challenging. The price is also relatively high, mainly because of the model's size and the large number of parts. Still, the result is quite interesting. It is an unusual subject for scale modeling, and a vehicle like this immediately stands out among the more typical tanks and armored vehicles on the shelf. The next kit is the Pukguksong 2 from Hobby Boss. The real system belongs to a newer generation of North Korean military technology. The Pukguksong 2 missile system was first introduced in the mid-2000s. Unlike earlier Scud-based systems, it uses a solid fuel missile and is launched from a tracked transporter rather than a wheeled vehicle. The launcher itself looks quite unusual. A large tracked vehicle carrying a massive missile gives the system a very distinctive appearance compared to traditional wheeled launchers. From a modeling perspective, that unusual layout is part of what makes this kit interesting. The Hobby Boss kit is large and fairly complex. The chassis alone includes many parts, with a detailed suspension, road wheels, tracks, and hull components. On top of that sits the launcher structure and the missile itself, which makes the finished model look quite imposing. Detailing overall is good. The suspension, launcher frame, and smaller structural elements are represented well. However, this is not a simple kit. The parts count is fairly high, and careful assembly is needed, so beginners may find it challenging. The price is also relatively high, which is typical for large and unusual subjects like this. Still, the finished result is quite striking. It is a rare and unusual vehicle that stands out immediately among the more typical tanks and armored vehicles on a modeler's shelf. Now, let's move to aviation, and here the situation is a bit unusual. Despite the fact that North Korean aircraft are well known, almost no model companies release kits specifically in North Korean markings, which is a little surprising. Aircraft like the MiG-15 and the MiG-29 are widely represented in scale modeling. There are many kits available, produced by different companies and in different scales. In fact, creating a North Korean version would not require any changes to the model itself. A new box art and the set of decals would be enough, but for some reason, very few manufacturers do this. So if you want to build a North Korean Air Force aircraft, you will most likely have to rely on a simple conversion. Fortunately, that is not very difficult. MiG-15 and MiG-29 kits are widely available, so it is easy to find a suitable kit depending on the scale and the price-to-quality balance you prefer. After that, it is mostly a matter of adding the correct decals and finishing the model in North Korean markings. The conversion set you see on the screen provides decals for two North Korean UAVs. Both aircraft are essentially very close copies of American drones. The manufacturer suggests a simple approach. You take a standard MQ-9 kit from Revell or Italeri and use these decals to convert it into a North Korean version. The result is the Setbul 9, a North Korean UAV that closely resembles the American Reaper. An interesting extra detail is that the set also includes a small bonus, a 1:48 scale figure of Kim Jong-un. Now it's time to talk about tanks. And the situation here is very similar to what we saw with aviation. Ready-made model kits of North Korean tanks simply do not exist. At the same time, the base vehicles from which these tanks were developed are widely represented in scale modeling. For example, the main North Korean tank, Chonma-ho, is essentially a copy of the Soviet T-62. North Korea received these tanks decades ago and later began producing them domestically, followed by numerous upgrades and modifications over the years. From a modeling perspective, this actually makes things easier. Kits of the T-62 are produced by several companies, including Tamiya and Trumpeter. With some additional work, it is possible to convert one of these kits into a Chonma-ho by adding the distinctive equipment and modifying some external details. The result can be a very unusual vehicle that stands out from the more common Soviet or Western tanks typically seen in model collections. The situation becomes more complicated with the Pakpong-ho. This is a more modern North Korean tank that appeared in the 1990s. Its design combines elements from both the T-62 and the T-72, making it something of a hybrid. Because of that, converting an existing kit into a Pakpong-ho would require much more work and more significant modifications. A similar story applies to the Songun 915, which is considered a further development of the Pakpong-ho. This version features additional equipment, explosive reactive armor, and various weapon systems mounted on the turret. Despite the fact that suitable base tanks exist in scale modeling, manufacturers still do not produce dedicated kits of these North Korean vehicles. And the same is true for the most modern North Korean tank, the M2020, which was first shown publicly only a few years ago. Despite its unusual appearance and interesting design, there is still no scale model of this vehicle either. The last vehicle on our list is the G-Class, and no, this is not a mistake. Mercedes vehicles really are used by the North Korean Army. During military parades in Pyongyang, you can sometimes see entire columns of these vehicles. They're usually used as command or parade cars, carrying officers and accompanying military formations. How these vehicles actually ended up in North Korea is not entirely clear. They were almost certainly not delivered through official channels, since luxury vehicles like this fall under international sanctions. Most likely they were purchased through intermediaries in third countries, possibly through China or the Middle East. From a modeling perspective, this is also an interesting subject. Revell produces a Mercedes G-Class kit that can be built almost without modification as a North Korean parade vehicle. It mainly requires a different paint scheme and a few small adjustments. And the combination of a G-Class and the North Korean Army already makes for a very unusual model on the shelf. That's all for today. I hope you found this video interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think about this topic and what other North Korean vehicles you've seen represented in scale modeling. And I'll see you in the next videos.